I remember hearing or reading quite a while back that Kaylee Gonzalez had called 911 because she saw someone in the forest area around the King Road house while she was walking Murphy after her and Maddie had returned in the early morning hours on November 13th. I've never been able to confirm this, obviously. So if you know anything about this or you heard this, please let me know in the comments, because this is something I know that I heard this, but I've never been able to confirm it, which leads me into what I want to talk about today. Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky, and today I want to talk about the 2-hour time gap before the crimes began. The 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. time gap. Now, we know that we had an 8-hour time gap from 4 a.m. when law enforcement believes that these crimes began to almost noon when law enforcement was contacted. But we also have a 2-hour gap, which occurs right before the crimes began, according to law enforcement. 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Now, we know that all of the roommates, or according to Bethany and Dylan, all of the roommates were home by 2 a.m. And law enforcement believes that the crimes began at 4 a.m. So let's talk about that 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. time gap and what was happening during that time. We don't really hear or talk about the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. time gap much, and I believe that it's rather important because these were the last hours before these victims lost their lives. So unlike the other roommates, we kind of know more about what Kaylee and Maddie were doing that night, because they're on video and there's photographs basically following them throughout the evening. So Kaylee and Maddie were documented that night as to what they were doing that night. So we have a good idea about what they were doing on the night of November 12th into the early morning hours of the 13th. Now, we know that after they left the grub truck, they got into a car with a driver and he proceeded to take them home. Now, this driver stated that it was a normal conversation. Maddie and Kaylee were having a normal conversation and they were excited about getting home to share the carbonara that they had just bought from the grub truck. So we know that they probably would have eaten when they got home, and we know that they returned home at 1:56 a.m. And we know that because Olivia Gonzalez, Kaylee's sister, confirmed that they did return home at 1:56 a.m. So we know that after they got home, they were probably getting ready to eat. But being a dog person myself, I believe that Kaylee probably took Murphy outside right away as soon as they got home. It's just kind of a habit when you own dogs. A lot of you are probably dog people as well. And, if your dog's been inside for a while, as soon as you get home, it's just kind of a habit to let them outside or take them outside. So I do believe that Kaylee would have taken Murphy outside before her and Maddie ate. Now, taking Murphy outside would have taken a little bit of time. So it's possible that Maddie may have gone upstairs and passed out in her bed while Kaylee was outside walking Murphy. I would be very curious to know about the autopsy reports as far as whether Kaylee and Maddie actually did get to eat their pasta. So then we know that Kaylee made her last call to her ex-boyfriend Jack D at 2:56, and this was confirmed by the Gonzalez family. Now, does it seem strange that Kaylee made her last call to Jack D at 2:56 And then there was also a 911 call recorded at 3:01 a.m. So those calls, not saying the 911 call was from Kaylee, but it does seem strange that Kaylee's last call to Jack was at 2:56 a.m. and then only 5 minutes later, there was a 911 call recorded. So that's always just kind of seemed odd to me that those calls were so close together. Now, there has been some talk that some people believe that it could be somebody else who was using Kaylee's cell phone, which I think is possible, but I don't believe that somebody using Kaylee's cell phone would actually be trying to contact Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. I mean, I believe it would have been a text or something else. I don't believe that it would have been somebody actually trying to contact Jack D. So I do believe that the 2:56 call was Kaylee, and we know that she was awake at that time. Now let's talk about Xana's DoorDash order and her TikTok comment. So the DoorDash order arrived at the King Roadhouse at approximately 4 a.m. It was a contactless delivery, so it was left on the porch at 4 a.m. But we know that Xana would have had to order that DoorDash, earlier. And it could have been much earlier. I mean, it was a weekend night. They had a big football game. There was a lot of people in town. People were partying. So it's very possible that DoorDash was very busy that night. And Xana, it's very possible that Xana could have made that order much sooner than 4 a.m. It could have been 3 a.m. Now, again, we don't know who retrieved that bag from the front porch. We don't know that Xana is actually the one who picked up the bag from the front porch. That bag could have been sitting on the front porch, all morning for all we know. Now, I would be curious to know, again, with the autopsy report with Xana, I would be curious to know if Xana even ate that DoorDash order. That I would definitely be interested to know that. Now, the TikTok comment that Xana allegedly made at 4:12 a.m., I don't know. It seems odd. It does seem odd. And it definitely does seem possible, like that would be a situation where someone else could be using Xana's phone. Now, Ethan and Xana, I know that this didn't happen between 2 and 4 a.m. This happened sooner, but this is something that I just cannot get off of my mind. And that is that law enforcement, weeks and weeks after these crimes occurred, was still desperately searching for information about Ethan and Xana's whereabouts from 9 p.m. until 1:45 a.m. They knew where Ethan and Xana were from 8 until 9. But there's still that 9 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. time gap that they had no idea where Ethan and Xana were at. Now, in the PCA, they just magically appeared to be at the Sigma Chi house all night. But weeks after these crimes occurred, they were desperately searching for information about Ethan and Xana's whereabouts during these times. I just can't get that off of my head. I can't stop thinking about that because I feel like there's something there. Now, I believe that these crimes began closer to 3 a.m. I know that law enforcement has stated that they believe that these crimes began at 4 a.m., but I believe, from my research, I just believe that these crimes began at 3 a.m. And I believe that if these crimes did begin at 3 a.m. and the suspect did start at the top level, in which law enforcement believes that this suspect did start at the top level, then I believe that the suspect would have already been in the house when the victims got home and would have already been upstairs inside the house. Now, is it possible that Steve Gonsalves stated that he did not need to go up the steps? You know, when he said that he didn't need to go up the steps, did he mean that literally? Because that would make sense if the suspect began at the top level. Because then the suspect would have worked their way down and wouldn't have had to go up any steps. So is it possible that that's what Steve Gonsalves meant when he said that he didn't need to go up the steps? If he started at the top level, he would only be going down the steps. So it seems like there was a lot happening in these 2 hours between 2 a.m. when all of the roommates returned home and 4 a.m. when law enforcement believes that these crimes began. Now, Bethany and Dylan stated that they returned home at approximately 1 a.m. So the two roommates who returned home at 1 a.m. were left alive. And the 4 roommates who got home at approximately 2 a.m., their lives were taken. Stay tuned for my next video. I'm going to be talking about the Rebecca Zahau case. I really want to dive into this case. And if you're not familiar with this case, I did a video and talking a little bit about, the background, and I did a quick rundown talking about these crimes. So if you want to follow along with me on these, I hope you do. Go back and watch that video so you have a little bit of an idea of what's going on. Now, I'm going to be trying to make more consistent content. I know that I haven't been on here in a few days, and a lot of it's because I'm kind of working on my background and working on my environment around here. I want to be more comfortable when I'm talking to you all, and I'm getting more comfortable as as we go along. And I also want you guys to be able to, look at something interesting rather than just a blank wall. So please like and please subscribe if you like my content. We'll see you next time.